Hello and welcome to City Beat. We are your central source of news and information for the city of Rocky Mount. I'm Public Affairs Manager Tamika Keenan Norman, and during this week's edition of City Beat, I have joining me today Mayor Pro Tem as well as Councilmember Chris Miller, along with Councilmember Ruben Blackwell. Hello and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
And I thought it would be a really good idea to get them together today so we could talk about some of the things that we discussed during the annual council retreat, which took place this year in Fayetteville. So welcome to the show. Okay?
Thank you.
And we're gonna start with you, Chris, and talk a little bit about. We know that we have these council retreats annually every year, but tell folks what the purpose of the council retreat is.
Okay, I'll address that question sort of in two parts. One with regard to content, and one to while we go out of town. First of all, we're talking about subjects that take a little more time than we normally have in a committee of the whole. It's both wrap up and an in-depth look at the end of the year closing for the previous calendar year, and also some in-depth discussion of and planning for what we want to do in the coming year.
Okay. And I know the year before last, I think it was before I started with the city, you all went to Wilmington. And this year, Fayetteville was chosen. So, Ruben, why Fayetteville?
Well, you know, downtown Rocky Mount has been one of the priorities that the city has set, and one of the priorities that the city council has really embraced and endorsed. And one of the things, as Chris mentioned, that we try to do as a council is not just have conversation without having context. And so for us, it was very important that we go to other cities that have had declining downtowns, that when the city took a leadership posture, invested, worked with the business community to bring vibrance and life back into those communities, you see the end results. So our city council has traveled to Wilmington, we traveled to Durham, and now we travel to Fayetteville to see 3 different variations of a theme that says you must value your downtown in order for your entire region to prosper. And so Fayetteville, you know, to us was a great opportunity because there were some similar dynamics, differences, of course, you know, we all have different economic bases, but the bottom line is that there was a declining inner city community, but the city council had the vision and the foresight to partner with the business community and make downtown happen vibrantly and re-energizing the economy.
And you have to say Fayetteville did a good job because I used to live there in the 90s, graduated from Fayetteville State, and there was a big difference in the downtown area. I remember going to work on Hay Street. So a big difference. Tell me about some of the areas that you visited while you were in Fayetteville.
Well, first of all, I'll pick up and tell you that we go out of town because we're trying to avoid the distractions, both personal and city business, that would pull us away if we were trying to meet here, and also to get that fresh perspective and see ideas from other places, as Ruben mentioned. But some of the projects that we saw in downtown Fayetteville were renovated buildings in which they now have businesses on the ground floor and residences above, and those residences range from simple efficiency kind of apartments to pretty grand condos that take up 2 floors and more, and rooftop gardens. We were taken with those. We also visited a microbrewery, and you know, those are just springing up all across our state, and interest has been expressed through our downtown development manager. There's someone who would like to put a microbrewery here. We also had a bus tour of their Hope 6 project. They've got, I think it's a $20 million grant to take down deteriorated housing and to replace it with both better apartments and some freestanding houses. I think there were 105 of the freestanding houses.
And working in partnership with the school.
That's right.
That brought life back to the neighborhood and the community as well.
Okay. And Ruben, you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but how would a citizen feel like you going to this retreat in Fayetteville would be advantageous for them?
Well, first of all, I would hope that our citizens recognize that we don't work in a vacuum here in the city of Rocky Mount, that we need an opportunity to see what's on the ground. So when we create and devise strategies and plans, we actually want to see if those plans are in work in places in other locations. Also, we want to see what's not working, Tamika, because you know, our dollars are hard-earned dollars, and we've been struggling for quite some time in our community, and we want to make sure that every decision that we make we have fully vetted out all of the opportunities for success as well as failure. So for us, being on the ground in other cities and communities that have already walked down paths in which we're about to walk down ourselves gives us an opportunity to measure the effectiveness of plans and strategies, and then helps us to plan better for the resources that we have, as well marrying those resources with the vision of our citizens and our community. And ultimately, we just want to have a revitalized, dynamic place that everybody wants to live. That's the Rocky Mount that we envision. And you just can't always sit at home and create plans and think that those plans will work. You need perspective, and you need the opportunity to go out and see what has worked and what has not.
That is so true. And speaking of things that may work, may not, we've been talking about that proposed downtown event center. We had a company to come in from ACOM, a representative, to talk about that market feasibility study. And I've gotten so many questions about it. So let's talk about that a little bit. Chris, what was the purpose? Why did we do this market feasibility study?
Well, it's to give us an objective basis on which to make a decision. So this study looked at economic data and demographic data, looked at family structure, family income, ages of our citizens, also looked at what the competition would be from other areas, the already existing facilities that we would be kind of competing with if we built it. And the study was also very much looking at the kinds of facilities, the kinds of activities we could bring here, and what kind of facility then we would need to construct in order to draw those events here.
Okay. Event center, what type of events specifically are we talking about?
Well, it's a very wide range. It's sporting events, conventions, dances, high school graduation, proms, trade shows and shows for consumers. It would be it's proposed to be about 15,000 square feet and to have parking for about 2,000, and there would be maybe 5,000 fixed seats and some premium seating, and then there would be breakout rooms that could be used either in connection with the event that's on the main floor or used independently. And it's envisioned that there would be all this kind of support facilities in terms of loading docks and locker rooms and dressing rooms and that kind of thing to support the events that you would have there.
Okay. And just playing devil's advocate for a moment, some people may say, well, we have the Dunn Center, we have the sports complex, we have et cetera. How would this event center fill in that gap?
Takes us to another level. We do have venues that are adequate for what we have today, but to grow for tomorrow, we need something that will really be large enough to bring in opportunities that we just don't see in Rocky Mount right now. We don't have a place where statewide organizations can hold statewide conferences. We don't have a location where you can get mainline or top headers, entertainment-wise. We don't have places that can have multiple events at the same time in the same location. And when you think about 95, Rocky Mount is close to the Virginia line, but we're also close to the center of the state. But we were in a meeting with the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Travel and Tourism Agency, and their consultant told us that there were only 3 primary locations on I-95 that are really considered opportunities for conventions and larger venues, and Rocky Mount is one of the 3. And just because Rocky Mount doesn't do something doesn't mean it won't get done
Somewhere else.
somewhere else.
Money will go
And
there.
so part of our concern as well as our opportunity is we better strike while the iron is hot, and we better get ahead of the curve unless somebody else sees that that same opportunity exists. And who wouldn't want to have, I think, what is the number, 300,000 more people come into our community with all of their money and all of their interests? Who wouldn't want to come to a city where we have a history, rich history of arts and sports and culture and education? We have so much to tout, entrepreneurism. So, what we're believing is that a facility like this downtown in the heart of Rocky Mount, in the middle of the Twin Counties, will be a catalyst for economic generation and help to give our young people as well something to look forward to do and come to, and help jumpstart, an economy that's been struggling to redefine itself.
Okay, and speaking of opportunity, just reading the report, there's an opportunity for 71 jobs. There's an opportunity for, I believe, 19 full-time personnel. But there's also the chance that that center is going to operate in a deficit. So how can that help? How can we turn that?
Okay. The event center itself might not bring in enough revenue to cover its operating costs, but it will bring more visitors to the area who spend their dollars in hotels and motels and shopping centers and gas stations, and all of those purchases bring additional tax revenue both to the city and to the county. And so therefore it benefits citizens as a whole, because those are tax dollars that we're not getting now, they're going somewhere else.
And you don't evaluate the facility's effectiveness only by the revenue that it generates itself. The sports complex doesn't break even. We have to, bring other dollars to the table to make that work. But the residual impact that it's already making in the travel and tourism industry, those are tangible jobs. You speak of 71 jobs being created. That's just within that facility. But think about other hotels coming to Rocky Mount. Think about expansions of existing hotels. Think about the numbers of new restaurants that will be opened and the new jobs created because they'll be hiring people. Think about all the wonderful growth that will happen in the housing community because people have jobs now and they want to live in places that are new or refurbished or renovated. So I see nothing. I'm sorry, I'm like Hannibal. I see nothing. I see no Alps. I see no Alps. I feel and I believe that our community is really ready for something that's transformative and huge with great opportunity. The investment is going to generate a return.
Exactly.
I really believe. Chris, do you believe? I believe
I
that.
do.
We believe.
We believe.
Well, and we're not just going out there because we had a vision and a dream. That's why we did the feasibility study, and only the first part of that study has been done, and that was to investigate whether there was a need and whether the local area could support it. And the second part of that is to look at the exact kind of facility and the cost and where to put it.
And this isn't the first time that we've had this idea about an event center.
Well, in my three-term tenure on council, it's the first time that we've gone this far. Yes, to commission a study to get some hard numbers to actually base the decision on, and then to look at how we would fund it.
And other councils previous to us have had the same discussion. They've commissioned studies. And I mean, you look at even the Gateway Convention Center, which seats, I don't think they can seat 1,000 people. But in a convention center that won't seat 1,000 people, you have 6 hotels, in close proximity. We're talking about a 5,000 seat facility right downtown, So the next question is, where will the hotels be built? And how to fill up those beds that do not exist, that are not filled, rather, that exist but are not filled during the week with conventions and shows and opportunities. So we are, as Chris said, waiting for the rest of the story to be completed, or the opportunity. But the numbers today, just with what we have, speak to nothing but good things for Rocky Mount. And let's also think about this. We're not the only city in this country to think about having a convention center downtown, and really an event center, because it's really not just limited to conventions. And look at what DPAC has done for Durham. Look at what has happened in other communities where they've had convention and civic centers and event centers located downtown. One of the reasons we went to Fayetteville is because we wanted to go to a city that didn't do it downtown and to see what did not happen. And what you see is a lot of money invested in a huge arena, but you see no residual impact around that arena.
Because it's way out in the county.
It's isolated,
So we want to have this located in a location where there will be the opportunity for investment to occur right around and impact the neighborhoods that exist around there, and that will benefit all of us. It'll benefit all of us.
So what are the next steps to determine funding, location, etc.? What are the next steps?
Well, they are the half of the feasibility study, and I checked to see whether what's been done so far has been posted to the city's website, and it has not yet because it's just in draft form. When it's finalized, that part will go up, and when the second part is finalized, it will also go on the internet on our webpage so that citizens can see the basis for what we're doing and what we plan to do.
Okay. Now, before we talk about the other item we discussed during the council retreat, we talked about several things, but these were the two most prominent. Anything else you want to mention about the study?
One of the questions that I thought would be asked this morning was what I hear from my constituents and people in the community, whether they are in favor of it or not. And I think it's the same as with any new idea or new project. You're going to have naysayers no matter what you do. But we also have people with vision who understand that it's possible to assimilate the data on which to make a good decision. And just look at the sports complex, as Ruben mentioned. I well remember running for re-election, going door to door, talking to my constituents. And an older gentleman said, he didn't know why we putting his tax dollars in such a place. He wouldn't benefit from it. And I said, well, you plan to live in this house until you die? And he said, no, probably not. And I said, no, you'll probably move out from this house into an apartment or a retirement home, whatever. And who do you think's going to buy your house? It will be most likely a family with children who will appreciate having that sports complex, and it is an attraction to draw them to our community. So you have to look beyond your own personal needs and wants. Try to broaden your horizon.
Okay. The other thing that we've talked a lot about too is housing. I know Mr. Penny did a presentation about capital projects.
Right.
Housing was a part of that. Talk a little bit more about that presentation.
Other projects that were included in that. Well, one of the key items, as far as I'm concerned, is addressing our deteriorating streets. With resurfacing. And in many cases, the only thing at this point we can do is to rebuild a street because we've not been able to put the money in to resurface it, as we've needed to. Normally, those funds come from the power bill, and there's just not enough money. Power bill comes from gas taxes, and as people drive less or as they have more efficient cars, they consume less gas, and so our revenue goes down. And then that's also money that's allocated all about the state. So we have to find another way of funding these things. Otherwise, if you don't invest in your streets and they continue to decline, then people are running into potholes and knocking their alignment out. And there are costs to it if you don't address it. So streets are one thing. The police evidence room is another capital need that we have. There's a long list of them. Ruben, what would you say is your...
Well, I feel, we must continue the work that we've done to rebuild our inner city or core city communities that surround downtown. Other cities have declining communities, that they have to figure out what to do with and how to deal with. Our challenge is that so much of our physical geography within our city limits are comprised of older neighborhoods that have not had the benefit of reinvestment in infrastructure as well as in structures. And we've had a very challenged economy, and I hate to say this, but we still have to go back to the flood. We still had a devastating flood. The flood washed away a lot of things that we had to deal with. We don't anymore. But it also crippled us in many ways economically, and then the economic tsunami that everybody had to deal with, we dealt with worse. So we have folks living still in substandard housing that's deteriorating, and as a city we also have to figure out how to take the leadership in helping to incent the private sector, helping to stabilize our economy, working with our other partners in the county and the private sector to help create an opportunity for industries and small businesses to grow and expand, and to have a variety of housing throughout our entire city that is affordable and energy efficient and that looks nice, and people living in safe neighborhoods that they can raise families or retire comfortably or be single and be happy, So, but part of that, I think, has to do with us needing to really spend some time, effort, and energy to focus on redeveloping our inner city communities so that we can attract people of all different levels of income to every part of Rocky Mount.
Okay. And like I said, we discussed a lot of items at the
Yes.
council
Right.
retreat. I know those were the two that may have had the most significance. Anything else that you want to mention?
What am I forgetting, Ruben?
Nothing. We just have a lot we're working on, but
Yeah.
just a lot happening, a lot taking place. You know, one of the things that we also recognize is the history of Rocky Mount is wide and it's varied, and it's very deep and broad in many, many areas. And so many of us on council, you know, are working with communities and individuals. You know, Chris leads an organization that the Hall of Fame, you know, that really brings attention to people who have made significant contributions, not just in Rocky Mount, but in other places and around the world. And one of the things that we believe that we can all build on the energy is not just remembering our history, but finding a way to promote it, and then looking for those things that can encourage young people that are living
That's
here
exactly
today
right.
to carry on, because we can't stay stuck in the past. We want to have some new heroes, you know, some new artists and some new sports figures and academicians, you know, new entrepreneurs that we believe that we can incent. So part of what we really spent a lot of time, Tamika, talking about is really the marketing and the branding,
Right.
you know, and helping us to believe in ourselves, you know, believe in the Rocky Mount, not just that was, but the Rocky Mount that we can be.
Exactly. Okay. So
That's
overall,
that's your area.
Yes,
Tamika.
it is
So
my
you know how
area.
to do that. You know how to help us
And
do
that branding and the positive imaging
Yeah.
effort is continuing, and you know, quite a few of us, you and I are both involved in one or two
Right.
of those committees.
right.
Yeah.
So overall, you think this was a great retreat?
Of course, they're all good. You know, it's an opportunity to relate to each other in a more relaxed environment, and the better you know somebody, the better you understand their values and their perspective, then the better you can work together on the problems that the city has. And it was a good choice for a location. I hope we can continue to find places to go like that where we learn from what we see and come back and apply it here.
Yes.
And that's the one thing, you know, that I feel that our citizens should know is that we really have an incredibly gifted team on our staff. You know, our staff is hardworking, creative, brings great options, always looks at what the financial feasibility, you know, is. You know, we continue, and this is something you probably never ever do a show on, but, you know, we continue to get awards for our budgeting, you know,
Right.
and ensuring that we have a balanced budget, you know,
Right.
that we are responsible in our fiscal governance, that we do make good decisions, and that we do so with the goodwill of the people in mind. And I think that is to be applauded and celebrated. And yet another reason, you know, when we talk about this event center, I'm sort of rewinding a little bit, is that, you know, the question about how to pay for it, you know, always is center in our minds and in our deliberations. But we have prepared ourselves as a community for a significant investment. And one of the things that we cannot expect, if you don't invest, you won't get a return.
No.
You know, you won't get a return. And all we have to do is look in our neighborhoods that have not received investment, no new investment in generations. And how do you expect those neighborhoods to be able to compete with new neighborhoods if there's been no new investment? So the same goes for our downtown. How do you expect downtown to be beautiful if somebody doesn't take the leadership and do something to make it happen? And that's what I believe we're doing together as a community. Douglas Block is a wonderful glimpse into our future,
It
you
is.
know, but I am more excited about where we're going than what we've already done.
And Downtown Renaissance that I'm involved in is, even before I came on the board quite a few years ago, they were acquiring properties that were deteriorating, that the owners were not investing in, and, you know, getting a roof on them and at least stopping the deterioration. And so many of the properties downtown that have been renovated have been, it's been out of town folks that have come here and seen the potential there and invested in it. If we can only get our local people who have the financial wherewithal to see the same potential and the same opportunity, because those, well, look at Asheville. You know, our city manager, Charles Penny, was there at one point, and they had a very small tax base, and their inner city was not in great shape, and they gradually invested in it and brought it back. And I forget the multiple that their tax base is now of what it used to be, but it's several times.
Yeah, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, today they just announced, you talked about the microbrewery.
Right.
Asheville today was named one of the top 5 cities in the country for innovations in microbreweries, you know.
Okay.
And so, I mean, they're competing with Boston and
Right.
Seattle and, you know, places like that. So, you know, it's possible. And I just want to say this too, you know, the point that Chris mentioned, that sometimes people who are not from a community have more vision for the community than the people who live in the community. But what I would like to say is, just because people here don't have the vision doesn't mean that someone won't. And so if we don't value the opportunity and the time that we have now to invest, it doesn't mean that other folks won't see it and come in and purchase and invest. And so we just really, you know, what we do, we really do for our citizens and for the future of Rocky Mount. Of course, we want to attract new people in. That's how you grow, you know, but we also want to see expansion from the inside out as well. So we're hoping, Tamika, that people will catch the vision, will run with it, and will help us, you know, make Rocky Mount great in a way that we've never been before.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining
Thank
us
you,
today on
Tamika.
City Beat. Mayor Pro Tem Chris Miller, Councilmember Ruben Blackwell, and thank you as well for tuning in to another edition of City Beat.